Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, Atlanta. Good morning, New York. Good morning, everybody, wherever you are. Thank you for plugging in at the Daily Huddle. My name is Giovanni Gonzalez, and I am truly excited to be with you. We get to start this conversation here at the Daily Huddle where we say the way you start your day gives you the rest of your day, and the way that you live each day gives you the rest of your life. So there are two things to get from that. It's about starting your day the right way. You gotta get intentional about that. And it's about the way you live each day. I am always honored to introduce America's executive coach, my friend and partner for many years, Mr. Sorel Catan. Good morning, Sorel.
Good morning, Giovanni, and I'm always delighted to be introduced by the #1 transformational leadership coach. That's you, Giovanni Gonzalez, my business partner and friend for life. And, I'm touched as I say that, Giovanni, because as Cledra comes on today, as Mark is here, as Agatha is here, I'm present to the community of givers that the Daily Huddle is. So thank you for giving me that kind of life. And to all of you in the live studio audience on Zoom, thank you for giving me the opportunity to live this life. One dedicated to giving you a space to create your day, and one dedicated to giving experts like Cledra the opportunity to make a difference. You know, like Cledra, I really get that you said yes because you want to make a difference for no other reason. And for that, I am, the Daily Huddle is, and the universe is immensely grateful. So today, Cledra is going to tackle a specific question. How does intentional thinking impact productivity and revenue? Not just anybody's productivity and revenue, yours. So sit on the edge of your seat, as who we have in the house is an author, speaker, and CEO of her company called Next Level Life and Business. She's been elected as one of Atlanta's top 10 over 40 for inspiring others to live their best life. And after over 20 years in corporate America at an executive level, Cledra used her talent to grow million-dollar brands in the pharmaceutical industry. And she took that and moved that over to herself. Now she's grown her own brand as a global life coaching business with advanced degrees in, hold your horses now, chemical engineering and nutrition from both North Carolina A&T State University. Cledra integrates neuroscience, engineering, and cognitive behavioral principles to help her clients rewire their brain through intentional thinking. That's who's in the house with us today. And Cledra, I'm so happy to have you. I cannot wait for the world to hear you on the Daily Huddle. Welcome. Good morning. It's all yours.
Good morning, and thank you, Sorel, for that amazing introduction. And I just want to say thank you to you and Giovanni for this space in the world at this time. It's needed, and so I appreciate you for your commitment to putting out the Daily Huddle and for the mission of helping us all navigate our thinking and our emotions in order to have the best life and business possible. And so today we're going to be talking about intentional thinking, which is my sweet spot. He mentioned chemical engineering, so I'm a nerd who loves lipstick. So I'll give you a little bit of both this morning, all right? So, all right, so I want you to start thinking about your thinking in terms of hygiene. When you got up this morning, I'm sure you brushed your teeth, you showered, but start thinking about thought bubbles. You know, when we were kids, the cartoons had little thought bubbles that would come above their head. So when you wake up in the morning, there's a thought bubble that is unintentional. That bubble has all of your unintentional thinking. And let me just do a temperature check. How often do you check in with your unintentional thoughts? That's the equivalent of the beginning of your mental hygiene. And so your unintentional thoughts, each day we have that bubble. And then because all of you are dynamic people, you also have another bubble of what you're aspiring to do. And so we're going to talk about that aspirational part. So you have the unintentional and you have the intentional. And the intentional does not happen by accident. The unintentional is like weeds in a garden. It happens no matter what you do. So if you aren't intentional about cleaning that up, it's impossible to have the level of productivity and revenue that you want. So what is keeping us from the unintentional and the intentional bubble is this right here, your head. And I'm going to be using the acronym TEAM to help you see your mind. But before I do that, I want to rewind just a little bit so that you know a little bit more of who you're listening to. Besides the bio, there's always the life, right? And so I grew up as an only child with two incredible parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. He bought a grocery store when I was 12. My mom taught biology and anatomy. So I have the blessing of being able to witness two people who were just brilliant. You know, the older you get, your parents become like Einstein. When you're a kid, you think they don't know anything. And you're like me, the older you get, your parents would just become more and more brilliant. And so those two people, I grew up in a Christian home, and the work ethic was extreme. The ability to have the faith and the work combined. That's the way I grew up, that if you work hard, you could have it. How many of you grew up like that? That if you work hard, you were told that if you worked hard, you could have it. You could put it in the chat. And so we had those seasons that I call the green light seasons, where what we plan comes true. You know, I went to North Carolina A&T, like Sorrell said, I finished #1 in chemical engineering, the green light life. But then we all get to these seasons. One of my favorite quotes, my dad, we love boxing. That's what we had in common. One of my favorite quotes is by Mike Tyson, that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the ability to handle that punch is what I work on with achievers, because we know how to achieve, but how do you recalibrate after the punch? And my punch happened about 11 years ago, when I had all the green light life of working hard and you get it. And the danger of that kind of life is you can mistakenly think that you're actually in charge. But then I was humbled, as many of us have been humbled in this COVID situation, to realize that what we plan really. So my punch was the unraveling of a marriage, reconciling that I would never be a biological mother, and my job at the time being dissolved. And so I made it to Atlanta 11 years ago in the ashes of my dreams. And I love to describe it that way now. I'm grateful for it because, again, don't lose sight of unintentional and the intentional bubble. How do you recalibrate after the hit? So the practice of cleaning your thoughts and the practice of being intentional about your productivity and your revenue is just that. It's a practice. Okay, so when I came here at 39, I'll be 50 this year, everything was nothing like what I planned. It was the punch. And so when I coach this, I want you to think about your punch. And I usually describe it as a 4D intersection. It's a death, it's a diagnosis, it's a devastation, it's a divorce. We all at some point come to that intersection. And that's when we have the opportunity, and I see it as an opportunity, to decide what we're going to intentionally think. And so that's how I came to this work. I love to just give you a little bit of a backdrop. And so when I first came to this work, it was more the global, like, what is the big picture thinking? Now I realize that every single day we need to examine our mind. Every single day. And keep in mind, observed Christian parents who were married until the day my dad died. You know, in my family, you stay married for life. Wasn't going to be a mom. I have an incredible mom. I have witnessed That's what women did. They became amazing mothers. Wasn't going to do that. So I had to decide. And I'm sharing this. I don't want you to get lost in my story. I want you to get in your story. What is it that you need to decide that perhaps you haven't? Because you've been unwilling to do the recalibration. And so now we're going to talk about the team that I talked about that's between the 2 points. Every single day, there is a mental transformation that's going on. You get to decide whether it's going to be intentional. Every single day. There's the unintentional script, and there's the choice for the intentional script, or the script that someone will fill in for you. CNN, MSNBC, you get to decide. So let's get with it. So TEAM, the acronym to help you remember all of this. The T stands for how you choose to translate your trials and trouble. That is a choice. You get to translate. I had a decision of how I would translate my divorce and not being a biological mom. I decided that it was going to mean that I would find the love of my life, and I did. I decided that it would mean I would give birth to a movement. I would give birth in a very different way. You and I get to decide how we translate trouble. That's intentional. The E is the environmental impact. So I mentioned to you, my observation of the majority of the women in my formative years, they were mothers. So I had to be intentional about finding women who were in my environment who lived their lives a very different way. So what I want to ask you is, what have you been told about possibility? And do you still want to believe that? Sometimes we don't examine what's possible. In this season, I'm, about to be 50, and a lot of my friends, well, Cledra, you know what menopause means? No, it means what I decide. So where have you adopted thinking because that's just the typical, because of where you are? There's a lot of group think and herd think in this current environment, that COVID means that you can't be aspirational. It means you need to gain weight. No. My clients, and for me, I decided I would get healthier. I would get stronger, and my business would thrive. And that's exactly what it has done. The reason I'm mentioning this is not to say yay me, I'm saying yay you, to get intentional about your thought bubbles. What have you intended in this season? It will not be accidental. So our discussion is the impact of intentional thinking on productivity and revenue. And what I'm bringing you back to is, what are you telling yourself, or have you adopted thoughts and beliefs of your environment? That's the E. The A is your adaptability quotient. Now, usually when I talk about adaptability, people talk about adapting or adjusting to what is. But there's a secondary definition of adaptability, and I'm going to read it because I don't want you to miss this. It's the capacity to be modified for new use or purpose. The capacity to be modified for new use or purpose. That's very different than adjusting to what is. So we're in an environment now where it's not about EQ and IQ, it's about AQ. Your adaptability quotient is your ability to embrace the fact that will you allow yourself to be made over for an entirely new purpose? That's the concept. The AQ quote, the AQ is what I had to give rise to when I came to Atlanta. Was I willing to adapt to something that I hadn't even considered? And in my belief system, I can tap into a mindset that is things that no one that hasn't entered into the mind of anyone. I have access to that mind. All right. So your AQ is your ability to be willing to be made for an entirely new purpose. It's not to adjust to what is. I'm assuming I'm talking to leaders. That's who I coach as well. These are people who are on the front line. This is the lead dog pack right here, right? The scenery only changes for the lead dogs. The dogs behind are what? Sniffing? We don't sniff on here, right? So your AQ. And when you open your mind, again, that's the intentional bubble. Every morning, there's space that I create. What am I not seeing? Show me what's never been done before. And we'll talk about how you prime your brain in our discussion point. But the A, so we're T was translating trial and trouble. E was your environmental cues. A, your adaptability quotient. And I'll conclude here with the M. And that's management. Makeover, not management. So to manage is to take what is existing and to manage it. I don't use those terms. I don't do time management. How do you manage something that's finite? No, I'm aligned with my priorities and what I'm going to produce for the day. Bill Gates says, busy is the new stupid. My mentor says that all the time. I invite all of you to retire the sentence, I'm busy. What does that mean? I'm productive. And I invite you to say that and to adopt, again, that's a thought, that's an intentional thought to have each day to create the intentional revenue with the intentional levels of productivity. I'm busy does not create high levels of productivity. It creates emotional exhaustion. So the process of making over your thoughts is what I teach is the think, feel, act cycle. And that's been around in cognitive behavioral therapy for years. But I've created my own system of doing it because just to lean it out. Chemical engineering is all about looking at a process and looking at being able to identify the inefficiencies as quickly as possible to create to replicate a process that gives the highest yield. All that means I used to do that with equipment. Now I do it with the brain. I do it with people. It's looking at where are your leaks in efficiency. And it's all up here. Remember the unintentional and then you have to be intentional about your daily thought target. The brain wants a target. If you don't give it one, it will adopt one. The team is what's in the middle. Your thinking, your feeling, your thinking determines how you feel. Your feelings give rise to every action that you take. What you habitually do or don't do gives rise to your results, your productivity, your revenue. So that's what's underneath the M, TFA. Your thinking drives your feelings, drives your actions, and it drives every result. That's the anatomy of a thought. That's the anatomy of every result. Every result that's visible began in an invisible realm. So separate from an intentional bubble, it is impossible to create the results that you want in a way that isn't in overwhelm and hustle and graspy and desperate. So I'm excited now to talk to all of you about how intentional thinking impacts our productivity and revenue. I hope I was a good steward of the time here. I'm looking at the time, 9:19.
You are an awesome steward of the time, and everything in your world is intentional, including your thinking. Cledra, thank you so much. I'm not going to add anything to the space other than to open it up and say, who wants a piece of that kind of thinking? Sheila, go ahead.
All right, that was really awesome, Cledra, from coach to coach. Well done and well distinguished. My question is, can you talk a little bit more about how you transition in the morning from your unintentional thinking to your intention, like how, I really get it. So yeah.
The mental hygiene. So excellent question, Sheila, and thank you for that compliment, coach to coach. And so the way I transition is when I come to my desk in the morning, I literally examine my mind with a sheet of paper. I have my thoughts right here and I dump them out. So you need to do a thought download every single morning. Don't edit it. The reason you don't want to edit is because you want to know the themes that your brain has that are impairing you from creating the results. When we edit it, see, positive psychology has done a lot of damage for our brains, for optimizing our brain. Because if you try to put a positive spin on it or an affirmation before you learn the origin of it, then you really lose control of directing the power of it. So do the thought download and then look at it, Sheila, objectively and say, now, which of these thoughts do I want to hold on today? you know? And so and you'll start seeing themes, patterns of thinking that you'll need to be aware of. And the reason you want to do that in the morning is because you'll be able to access that part easier. And then you want to look at that and say, now, what thought do I want to intentionally choose today? And a lot of times it's not any of the ones that I just put on the paper.
Got it. I get that. Yeah.
But
Sure.
I'm aware of what my unintentional narrative is, which is important because it's going to pop up in different parts of the day. But now I'm on to myself, and I want you all to be on to yourself.
It's great.
Great.
Awesome, girl.
Well, thank you.
Adriana, you're next.
Hey, good morning and thank you.
Good
Where do you locate meditation in your daily routine? With the intentional bubble, or where do you locate meditation?
Excellent question, Adriana. So again, if we follow through my morning with Sheila, so it's like my mental shower, my hygiene. I empty the thoughts and then decide what I'm going to hold on to for the day. And that's when I get quiet. So that's when I get quiet. And so my meditation includes adding scripture from the Bible. I know there are different meditations where it's emptying the mind. I don't subscribe to that. I believe in intentionally directing the mind. And I direct it with my Creator's words. And I realize we may have different faiths, but that's what I do. So just from what I know about science, I don't subscribe to the emptying. I subscribe to the intentional feeling.
Great, great. Mary Pat?
Well, I'm just going to say thank you because Sheila and Adriana just got my questions answered. Wow, 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 wow. And this is so powerful. Thank you. And for the way that you did steward your time well, and you got a lot into us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Pat.
Thank you very much, Mary Pat.
Andrea Villa.
Cledra, thank you so much for such an inspirational words early this morning. And my question, and again, like Sheila was saying, from coach to coach, fantastic way of inspiring us and making us think with purpose. So my question is, it triggered my inspiration when you said you don't believe about time management. So I want to, because that's what I do in my coaching. I don't believe in time management. It's more about the mind management. Time management, I don't hate, but I really dislike the way that we were taught time management. And it's all about mind management. So I want to pick your brain about your thoughts when you said it's not really about time management.
Okay. Oh, I love this. So it's not about, it's 24 hours, period. Okay. There's nothing to manage. So it's looking at every day, again, the thought bubbles. And I do this with like brain images. If I had a slide, it's looking at every day. I'm focused on the fruit of the day. What are the results? And then I reverse engineer that. So what actions do I need to take today to produce those results? And then those actions are on top of time blocks that have beginning and end times with an associated result, not activity. So it's not work on my book. It's write 200 words, submit it to the editor. You know, it's granular. And there's a begin and an end. I don't allow myself just in an unlimited amount of time to complete things. So that's the other part of it. It's the fruit, the result. It's the activities with begin and end time for every activity that produces a result. And it's on top of a time block. So I don't make exhaustive to-do lists. Those are totally inefficient. When are you going to do it? Do you even have the time to do it? Is it a priority? It's not intentional. A to-do list is not intentional. It's just like a dump. And then people stay in this loop of, I don't have enough time. And it's an unexamined life and an unexamined use of how they invest their life minutes. And so I believe in granular examination of how, the first thing I always tell my clients to do is a time inventory. It's like when you go to a nutritionist and she says, write what you eat, all of a sudden you want to eat the apple, right? So when you do a time inventory, all of a sudden you're going to realize, oh, I have been on Facebook 2 hours.
Yep.
So it's about examination. When we bring things to the point of examination, then you can look at, why am I really doing this?
Yep. No, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you, from coach to coach.
Yep.
Giovanni, I know you can't resist. Go for it.
Yes. No, thank you, Sorel and Cledra. This was phenomenal. You're just lovely. I can't get enough of what you bring. I was actually I don't know what to say, hooked or inspired by the environmental impact from Teen, where you said you translated the pain towards the birth of a movement, and I just love that kind of intentional thinking, and it really requires, in my way of looking at life, a huge work on one's part to take on a pain and make it the birth of something else. And so I wanted to have a little bit more of you on that kind of intentional thinking, because I feel that so many people right now are in some real pain. Diminishing it, it's like almost rude, right? And I get, of course, that that you've got to translate that pain quickly, but I wanted to get a little more thoughts on your part around that topic.
Thank you for that. And I totally agree that, to translate, to be dismissive about pain is insensitive. And so the specific ways to do that, first, there's a surrender. And there is no easy way. I'm glad you mentioned pain. I'm not a coach. You'll never hear me say think positive or glue all these affirmations to your window. Sometimes we are in a season of tears. And what I want people to know who may be listening, who are in deep pain, the tears are transportation. And so if you don't allow yourself to process the emotion and you instead press it down, you will not be transported. So my tears and my sorrow were just as much a part of the translation of the pain. So allow yourself to experience emotion. Most of us were not taught that we could allow the emotional range. Most of us are happy or sad, but there's a range. And life is meant to be experienced with the entire range. So allow yourself to grieve the loss of what you planned. I'm sharing something very quickly that's a 15-year story. Okay. So I don't want you to think that I'm sharing, that all of that happened and I said, okay, let's write books and let's be a life coach. No, not at all. So I want you to allow the process, because it is your immersion in the process of the transformation that will give rise to a healed and whole version of you. I see too many people trying to teach out of the broken part. I have the scar, but I'm not broken. There's big difference. Okay. And so the other thing that I want people to know who are, I've gone through job loss. I've lost my only baby, I have a bonus son now. It's just wonderful. But, when we're specifically speaking about sitting in the ashes of your life, which a lot of people are, I want you to know that there's a lot that can be built from the ashes. That's the adaptability quotient. You have to allow yourself to just create that idea that what else could be possible, and then let God, in my belief system, it's God will plan it. And I didn't see this. If you had told me 13 years ago that I'd be telling this story and I'd be happy about it, I would have probably punched you. At least in my mind, I would have punched you. How dare you think this stuff, anything could come of this? You have to be okay to not know. And when we fill in the blanks too quickly, we impair the amazing life that can come from the ashes. So it's like those plastic bottles. I don't know if you guys have seen that commercial where it's like, these shoes were made from a plastic bottle. And I'm like, wow, as an engineer, I'm like, what? But that's the AQ. That's the adaptability quotient.
Awesome. Cledra, we've got one last question from Mark Hand.
Oh, you're on mute, Mark. And I'm only here because of Mark. Thank you, Mark.
I know.
Good morning, Cledra. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. First part of my question is a compliment. I met Cledra at a women's conference. And I won't even get into that whole story, but I wasn't expecting you to come out there and blow me away. She gave a part of herself, a transparency of a story, and I'll let her tell it a different day. And I was like, wow. And I even went up to her afterwards and said, you know, how did that turn out for you? But she had gone through this terrible thing, and out of it came this great light and this great person that she is. You are phenomenal, like hands down, like you inspire me. It's very few people in life that just like inspire me. Like after I hear you speak, I'm ready to go out and like change the world, or at least change myself. So my question is, and you're very, the word depth comes to mind when I hear you speak, because you give so much depth of yourself. But my question is, being a lead dog that we all are, who do you go to for inspiration? Who coaches you? Who do you allow to empower you? And I'm not talking about your parents and your upbringing. I'm talking about right now. Who empowers you?
Well, thank you for all of that. And so I have a coach. I talked to my coach right before this. So every Friday I get coaching. And so the two women who coach me now, they're women that, you know, they're helping me with this team in between here, you know, to take my company to, you know, they're 2 comma women is what I call it. You know, those are my mentors. So I'm very intentional about, especially the women who pour into me, they have to have what I want. And I don't mean just financially, you know, spiritually. And to build that, and it's a group of women. I would say it's like a choir of women. You know, I have the women who are very strong spiritually. I have the women who are, you know, generating millions. I have the women who are really sold out on being a great wife. So every value that I have, if you would see them as pillars, I have a person who feeds into me for those pillars. And that's what I recommend for you. You very seldom get it from one person.
Thank you for answering that. That's a question I've had for 10, 15, 20 years.
And you have to build a team, again, team or choir. You know, everyone can't sing soprano. That would be aggravating, right? You know, you got to have like the harmony. So.
Well, Cledra, we've come to the time where we have to say goodbye, but it's not for long, I'm sure. So we typically save the last minute for our honored guest, and that last minute is yours. What do you want to say to the...
Whatever result that you want, I want you to write it down. Forget about how. Write it down, and then get out of the way and know that you will be shown. You will begin to bring the people that you need towards you, but you have to get clear about what you want as opposed to being so clear about what you don't want. And the power of your mind will draw you towards that if you could stay out of your own way with needing to know how.
Very good.
Well, there you have it, world. Go live a phenomenal life.
Hey.
Giovanni, take us home.
Cledra, thank you so much. You're a rock star. Mark, Andrea, Sorrel, Sheila, Ronald, Adriana, Mary Pat, Paige, everyone who's here. I'm not mentioning everybody here. Thank you for joining the Daily Huddle. We'll see you on Monday. I love you.
On Facebook, Mr. Eddie Gross was here.
Oh, my love of my life. Eddie, that's right. Love of my life. Intentional. I was intentional about that. Right.
Very good.
All right,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye,
Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week.
Thanks, Cledra.